It's time for part 3 of this here Day 9 Daily, where we're looking at IdrA play against RorO and win in itty bitty little teensy tiny weensy teensy steps. Thus far, the most significant thing we've seen out of IdrA is his unwillingness to give up an edge and how comfortable he is just parking himself here or parking himself here. And when all of a sudden he kills off a base, the most important step that we see him take is reset up all these counterattack measures. Because when you have a lead in bases, you have more ground you have to cover, and therefore it's more difficult to withstand counters. So we're seeing IdrA do the normal person thing. A lot of players will start slowly phasing roaches out of the unit mix and phasing in hydras and broodlords and all those sorts of assorted pastries. We're seeing the extreme difficulty that RorO is having defending this base, and as a result, why he's going to have to take this base up here. But if you're in IdrA's shoes, you're at least mildly comfortable with that. We see small counterattacks heading up here from IdrA. Ordinarily, this wouldn't be amazing, but this army was neither in this position to threaten the third base, nor was it in this position to defend the fifth base. So this ends up actually being quite out of the way for RorO to deal with, as he doesn't have sufficient spotting. And then what does IdrA do in the meantime? Well, that counterattack is coupled with this huge swing up the center alley. This is going to force all of RorO's units to be right here, and not to be comfortably defending this base. I don't know what these guys are doing. This makes no sense. Okay, there we go. Alright, cool. Kick-assedly enough, as we see IdrA with all his spines and all his good defense, taking out a base and all that sort of stuff. As he takes a base out, notice yet again, IdrA pulls way the heck back. After every successful kill-off of a base, there's this period where IdrA actually swells inward. I don't think you can swell in. He pulls inward before his whole army will swell outward. Ah, yeah. So IdrA, doing the usual thing, replacing roaches with broodlords and or hydras. Just more things to catch the opponent out of position. Now, RorO tried to do the same thing, but with a larger roach troop. And IdrA is going to be able to comfortably defend this. Why? Because even though he loses one building, he still has this defense for another counter here. He has this defense for another counter here. He has this defense for another counter here. And he has this huge defense for a counter and or direct attack here. Every single moment of this game where IdrA has to be on the defensive footing, he's just making sure that he is not avoiding, or he is not losing to multi-pronged attacks. And here comes, I think, my favorite part of the conclusion of the game. Oh, he lost his Greater Spire, by the way. That happened at the front. You know, losing the Greater Spire just doesn't feel that significant because he just, like, rebuilds it. The main reason that all that stuff's going on is to exchange the roaches for higher supply count things, but this, I think, is my favorite moment of the whole game. I love this! I love this! This is so great! This is a shining example of just positional play, holding strong all game long. And then you're able to take expansions that generally we consider to be not your base. Most people, most of your average bears consider this to be a base of RorO, and yet still we see IdrA, by holding this key piece of terrain, can defend that 4th, that bottom right 5th, and this far right 6th. And then RorO begins the push. Or excuse me, IdrA begins the push. I don't think there's anything too mind-blowing about the specifics of the push. Only that IdrA is doing this push aligned with defending this expansion behind. If, for instance, IdrA expanded here, I would much more want his push to be through this center alley up to the 4th base here, which would again make these two bases vulnerable. This is absolutely the best place to be positioned, but the broodlord push is behind the 6th base. This is where most people lose in Zerg vs. Zerg in late game, especially to someone who's just going pure Infestor Roach and not even building any Broodlords. The just counterattacks with poorly placed sixths in relation to the Broodlords. This is freaking sweet. So, in order of targets, Fungals should be targeting his Corruptors first. It's good to hit big old packs of units, but as long as we can keep 12, 13 Broodlords alive, I think you're in good shape. So a lot of Corrupts on his Corruptors, a lot of Fungals on his Corruptors. I'll even slow down this battle. There's the huge Fungal on those Corruptors. They will get hit with yet another Fungal. I'll even pause here to note that IdrA does not have that many infested Terrans. Actually, I think we can... There are a couple more of IdrA's infested Terrans. Most of them are RorOs, but that's okay, because infested Terrans are almost always going to glitch and shoot at the Broodlord's broodlings, because those are super low priority. So as long as we can take down his Corruptors, it's very difficult for infested Terrans to do much against us, which is pretty counter to mid-game Zerg stuff. I mean, just look at the number of RorO infested Terrans that are here. IdrA has some, but most of it has been fungal growth on the wall. Still throwing infested Terrans out en masse. Infested Terrans shooting broodlings. And IdrA wins it by a mile. What's really, really, really nice about a situation like this is that almost always your opponent is going to be forced to replenish Corruptors if he's behind on the air battle, because there's so much focus on that. Which means that if you are in the lead at this point in the air battle, you will almost always benefit by flooding Roaches. Sure, Roaches at a very basic level, you can just say, oh yeah, Roaches build fast, are cheap, and I can overrun them with superior resources. But two, and very significantly, we are almost guaranteed to see a pretty big pack of Corruptors pop out, especially if we have this big air lead. All the lag. Come on, computer, you can do it. You can do it. See, infested Terrans not so good against Broodlords in the late game. They're all just targeting the Broodlings. So here is that almost guaranteed swell of extra Corruptors, which is very difficult to do much damage against this force anyways, but with the flood of Roaches, then all of a sudden we get the gain of mobility. I will note, in a situation like this, especially if RorO had this base up, it's almost always correct to build just Roaches and Infestors for some period of time. Adding on extra Broodlords, I mean, already this is starting to make headway. There's no need to over-focus in an area where we're already doing just fine, A-OK. But a lot of fast units, Roach, Infestor, is going to work great. Especially if his Broodlords are in small numbers, because Broodlords in small numbers are not very good against Infestors in large numbers. Much like anything. So this is just kind of funny. But again, this is why I really like Roaches and Infestors at this point. Because this is going to be nearly impossible for a player who has a big air army only, just air and Infestors to deal with. This sort of stuff happens and you just keep backing up. Yeah. Nothing he can do. Now, I'd just like you to, again, envision if a whole pack of Roaches just streamed down here and attacked this place, that would be good. IdrA went ahead and went for the Corruptors. Where are all the Corruptors? A whole bunch of Corruptors just hatched, and I can't find them. There's 16 Corruptors on the field. Look, just take my word for it. There's Corruptors somewhere here. Ah, I found them. Just going for a little bit more of the muscular army, again, focusing on defending this base over here. But I will actually note, going in, I think fast motion here at the end is the most revealing. of all this stuff. So at 14 minutes, very conservative, no real attempt has been made. At 16 minutes, IdrA just positions himself here in a good spot to be able to take an expand. And then after killing off his opponent's attack, has the opportunity to kill his opponent's expansion. What's another way of saying that? IdrA waited for an opportunity, and RorO inevitably gave it to him by trying to be a little too over-aggressive. And then IdrA focused on just playing defensive, not dying to counterattack, and then just hung here for a really long time. Got more upgrades, got ahead in the hive. Here at 22 minutes, 2 minutes later, still there. Still just hanging out. And here's that lead and upgrades kicking in. 24 minutes. Still, by and large, hanging out. But all that hanging out has earned him an extra base. And then as I start really speeding through it, he's just building up a big army, building up a big army, building up a big army, having that lead. And it's only when there starts to be a big difference between his composition and his opponent's composition that we actually start to see some big swings in. Most notably, once I've eliminated my opponent's heir, he has to build corruptors, so then my roach hydra. Then, only then can I start splitting up. And this is kind of what I mean by the little itty-bitty advantages. It was not, oh, you're not building any mutalisks. Maybe if I build some mutalisks and surprise you, I'll win. Or you don't have any infestors, so I built infestors and surprised you and won. Or even, I built infestors and you saw them, but I still just had too many of them at just the perfect time. No, both players were making about the same units, roaches, infestors, hydras. Maybe RorO's making a few extra hydras, but there's really no difference in the composition. So IdrA just didn't force anything, just kept expanding, kept expanding, kept expanding, blah, 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 blah. And there you go. And then he just got this huge edge, and then once it was infestor broodlord versus broodlord corruptor infestor, IdrA just made a whole bunch of roaches to exploit that. Pretty cool. Patience is really key, but also patience without good positioning does you nothing. This positioning here and this positioning here. Aggressive positioning, but just lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of patience. Let us take some questions. Anyone have any questions? Let's take this question from open up notepad from Priest89. This is day 9 in Zerg vs Zerg mirror match with broodlord, corruptor, infestor. There seems to be many essential actions that has to be queued up. Fungal, corruption, infested, Terran, target fire. What would be the proper execution of these actions? What's the most important to focus on? I think the most important one is to queue up the infested Terrans, so that way you lob out a little bit earlier. Fungals, I think, are less significant right as the engagement is about to begin. Fungals seem good right before the engagement, like if, you know, his army's sitting there and you can wander up and just throw a fungal at him and catch him a little off guard. IdrA did that multiple times here. But I would absolutely focus on getting that first, like the first 20, 25 infested Terrans out first. And that's easy to do with a shift queue. And then other than that, just look for fungal opportunities. And as you're looking for that, you can just sort of like loosely spam the infested Terran key. But I mean, other than that, there's not that significant of stuff. Pretty straightforward. Let me see if the question grabber works. I'm going to see if it functions anymore, whether I'm just going to have to read it out loud. Let's see here. Doom, doo, doo, doom, bum, bum. From Venomous Pastry, it says, Day 9, how do you feel about using Nidus Worms to connect bases for RorO in order to deal with IdrA's pressure at the 4th? What I would say is, imagine IdrA positioning himself outside of RorO's 4th, just as we saw in this game. And RorO's going, God, I really want to get a 5th base up. And maybe I can just Nidus my 4th and my 5th together and keep them defended. First, even if that works, IdrA's 5th base is still ahead. Moreover, you're spending 200 gas to get the Nidus network and another 100 gas to get up the Nidus worm to be able to link the two. It's fragile, so there's still every chance that IdrA can run up and pick off the Nidus worm when you're not focusing on it 100% of the time. But even then, even if you do play perfectly and read everything perfectly, you still have a very difficult time because you put yourself even more behind in the gas count. IdrA was in a really nice position because he kept killing off this geyser here, especially in this mid-game position. No, I guess it was back at 20 minutes. Yeah, as his 4th was coming up, there's hydras here, so he was unable to take that out. I mean, investing more gas in that, I suppose, could work, but it's I'm not the biggest fan of it. Trying to think if there's another way you could defend it. You know, maybe the only way that RorO could comfortably defend it would be to throw down a lot of spines at the 4th, use Infestor Hydra with spines as defense, and then do multi-pronged roach counterattacks. But again, it's so hard to even get that up here. This is one of the reasons why this is such a great spot for IdrA. If IdrA was, say, down here, sure, this is good at defending the 3rd, 4th, and 5th, but it still leaves a little bit of counterattack possibility open here and open here if it gets to really, really late game. In mid-game, that's kind of hard to do. But, no, I actually don't think that the Nidus network would have been that effective. Now, what about in terms of aggression? That seems kind of unexplored on this map. There's a lot of other maps where we've seen it be really successful, like on Metropolis, but let me think about it for a moment. What if we put a Nidus network here, and we put up some spines, and then we just threw down a Nidus worm here in the back of the base? It seems a little risky because there's really not that much area to cover for us to be able to defend ourselves. Yeah, I don't think it's actually particularly useful here. It's just there's so much tight packing together of the bases. If maybe it got to this really late game situation and we knew our opponent had a lot of broodlords, or even hell, maybe closer to this 30-minute mark where IdrA really is quite broodlord heavy. Maybe if we went only Infestor, Roach Hydra, and just did Nidus Worm counterattacks, maybe that would pan out. I've seen players go like only Infestor and just avoid getting their own hive units if they feel really behind. And pure Infestor can match up quite well against someone who's kind of getting like a broodlord thing. I hope I answered that question reasonably. I've never really seen it work on this map. I don't think it would work in that situation, but I struggle to come up with on the fly how it would pan out. Touch of You asks, can we get superhero Manfred shirts in the store in the near future? I'll just do one of these. Oh yeah, there's gonna be all sorts of goody good stuff. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, Lerm says, Day 9, once you have lost control of these vital positions to the opposing Zerg, how do you go about getting it back, or what do you transition into? I don't have the game. I don't have the ability to open it up right now, but anytime you are behind on bases, you are going to be in the position to do more counterattacks. So Lenok, for instance, when he's behind on bases, splits his units up, builds no hydras, builds only roaches, and does very aggressive counterattacking. Like non-stop aggro, through-the-roof counterattacking. Emphasizing killing off drones over killing off hatcheries. Why? Because if your opponent's at 50 drones and still has 4 hatcheries, very few Zerg players are capable of saying, alright, I should just sack the 4th hatch and pull back to 3 bases, because I don't even have the drones to make use of it. Most Zergs will try to defend all bases. It's one of those sort of automatic subconscious things that happens when you're zipping around all over the place, trying to make sure that you're keeping your stuff together. So yeah, definitely doing much more counterattacks, being way more comfortable with it. 2, 3-pronged attacks that are just 6 to 10 roaches. Enough that they really gotta have an answer, but not so much that he can just kill it off and then kill you off. But yeah. And I would actually kind of delay taking your 4th if you just can keep up the counterattacking so much. Yeah. Counterattack. Counterattack. And maybe that would be a comfortable spot to go for a Nidus network. I'm thinking of something like... What's a map where that would actually be comfortable on? Maybe something like Metropolis. If you are on 3 bases, going all the roaches, against a guy who's on 4 bases, there's a couple big lanes of attack. But there's really only 2 big fat lanes, and then you can do a Nidus Worm for a 3rd. I think that's reasonable. Tomorrow we're going to be taking a look at Baby Knight, doing some PvT, knocking out the STC and Pult at the recent Lone Star Clash with some pretty unusual builds, a lot of blink play, very, very suave and sexy. And then on the following day, we're going to look at a really, truly, absolutely apeshit Zerg vs. Zerg between Scarlet and Nerchio that went for an hour, and ended with both players having under, like, 40 food or something. It was amazing. That's all. Bye! See you tomorrow!